lot of people say that the pyramids...
That's weapons fire.
What makes you think that they've already made communications?
We know this based on the descriptions in the Bible.
How can you calculate all this?
Who are we talking to on the moon?
And it sounds like Nikola Tesla got his information somehow from ancient Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say that the pyramids were some type of a power plant.
Yes. Not all the pyramids, some of them. So some pyramids have different functions, right? So the Great Pyramid at Giza, for sure, a wireless power plant, amongst other things. It was a multifunctional stone computer and a wireless power plant. It was also a communications device. So if you look at old images or old pictures of the Great Pyramid area at Giza, you'll see that the Nile used to run right up alongside of those pyramids. Now it's meandered miles and miles away. One of the main reasons why they don't want you to know is there was an ancient war that happened. That second war I told you about, that's why there's glass in the sands at the Giza Plateau. When you dig your hand in the sand, you'll pull up balls of glass. That's 3,000 degrees to create glass out of sand. That's weapons fire. And there's still evidence of weapons fire on the Bent Pyramid right out there at Giza as well, which I've documented many times. It's coming out in my new TV show. But nonetheless, the water would run underneath in these gigantic aquifers. The tubes for those aquifers are still there. You know, sometimes I've gone down in them. Even kids play around in them and everything. But when you have running water underneath magnetized crystal granite, which is what the base is made out of, you create something called physiostatic electricity. Then those ions rush up into the Grand Gallery area, and there were these resonating rods going up the Grand Gallery to the King's Chamber. Now the rods are gone, but the slots where the rods sat are still there. They can't take out the slots. The slots are embedded in the stone. Then also, when it got into the King's Chamber, he's surrounded by thousands of tons of magnetized crystal granite in this specialized box with a 2-to-1 ratio. Now, at some point, something happened where they had to install this extra box. It's a granite box that's inside the King's Chamber. People were saying, oh, this is a sarcophagus. I can't even lay in that thing. My knees have to be bent. It's not a sarcophagus. What it is, it's the same exact dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was a power plant device. We know this based on the descriptions in the Bible. And it's been replicated at 2 different universities by 2 different groups of people, and it generated so much power they had to shut it down, just based on the biblical information and instructions. When you take those measurements, it fits directly inside that box. And why did it fit in the box? Because the pyramid at some point had lost its ability to generate the maximum amount of power. And so that was needed to add an extra piece to fix the problem. And that's exactly what they did. Then the energy would shoot up through the apex. The obelisks are all made of crystal granite.
What do you mean the obelisk? What is that?
Those giant stones that stand up with the points at the top?
Okay.
Those are obelisks.
Okay.
They're all around the region. We have one at the White House, right? You know, we have one in Rome in the center courtyard there. They took them and put them all around. The one in Washington is obviously, it's man-made, but the other ones around the world are all come out of Egypt. But what's interesting is those obelisks, they capture the ambient electricity from the atmosphere. And then if you have something called a JED, it looks like a Tesla coil. I'll send you some photos of this stuff so you can utilize it. It looks like a Tesla coil, and it's all over Egypt. Everywhere you look in hieroglyphs, it's everywhere. And they have cables coming out of them, electric cables. They were connected to their electroplating devices, and anything else they needed, light bulbs, anything that needed electricity was connected to the JED. The JED would capture the ambient electricity from the obelisk. The obelisks were like electric wire poles in your neighborhood, basically, but just doing it all wirelessly. And by that method, they were able to transmit the wireless energy all around the region. And the JEDs would capture that energy and they can power whatever they wanted. And so, now what's also interesting about the Great Pyramid, a small amount of that water would be pushed up into the pyramid and down into the Queen's Chamber. Now, the Queen's Chamber, when you analyze it and look at it and look at the x-rays of it, you discover something interesting. It operates like an electrolysis machine. Why electrolysis? If you use electrolysis with running water, you can extract the hydrogen atoms out of the water, which is what we do in different types of engines that we have right now. The Navy has a ship that never has to come back for gas because it just takes the water from the ocean, extracts the hydrogen atoms, and pushes it into a chamber for engine combustion, and they run on hydrogen. They don't run on gas anymore. Matter of fact, that's the wave of the new future. We have Rolls-Royce developed an airplane engine that runs on hydrogen, and all the cars, including all the EVs, are going to go in the garbage can. All cars are going to be hydrogen-based in the next 10 years. Mark my word. Remember today. So what they were doing, though, they were utilizing it for what astrophysicists use it for, communication. Astrophysicists communicate and send information out into space to connect with ET or talk to ET on the hydrogen frequency, the most abundant frequency in the universe. Now, when you look at the Great Pyramid, it's got these giant shafts on the sides that align with Orion, Aldebaran, Arcturus, and all these other star systems on specific time frames, Sirius. And so what's happening is on specific alignments, they were transmitting on the hydrogen frequency updates, in my opinion, this is now my own hypothesis, updates to those star systems. Because why have those shafts pointed at star systems, and why have them have the capability of shooting hydrogen through those shafts? To me, it's a communications device, the same way we're using right now today in modern astrophysics.
What are we using in modern astrophysics?
We take the hydrogen frequency and we piggyback our data, zeros and ones, on it, and we send it out into space. Looking and hoping that another race of beings, I think that they already know who they're sending it to. They're just saying, we're hoping. I think they're communicating, but that's a whole nother podcast. But sending it out into space, that another race of people can pick it up and then decode the zeros and ones and decode the message, basically, and then transmit the information back on the same frequency.
What makes you think that they've already made communications?
Well, to me, just based on the advancement in sciences and what looks and appears to be of NASA as a front, the fake space agency, in other words, doing all the things that are already done in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and still utilizing those same techniques today, knowing that we know that they're 300 years ahead of us technologically. They meaning the private corporations. Well, why aren't we seeing any of that tech being used? So I just believe that, and I know this 300 years ahead from my private meetings. So I have a tech company called First Class Space Agency. And I was privy to a TS clearance for private space meetings at the Space Symposium in Colorado a few years ago. And in this room, I'm sitting there with some of the top tech companies in the world in space, travel, and also ancillary parts for space, like radiation hardened computer circuits and everything else. And they're all talking about how advanced, they are. And the number is 300 years ahead of the general population. So if they're 300 years of the general population, 300 years ahead, then what in the world are we doing with chemical rockets going up into space and all this kind of crazy stuff? Mm-hmm. So to me, when they say that they're communicating, I say, let me extrapolate a little bit more. They're trying to communicate. Let me extrapolate. You are communicating. This is just the way I decode it is there's something going on. They've probably made some kind of a type of contact at some point because they keep transmitting nonstop, up and down, nonstop. There's even a dish on the moon that we transmit via laser information to every single week. Who are we talking to on the moon? This has been going on for decades. Why are we doing this? So you got to pay those people to do that, so it's costing money. So there's a reason for this. So my hypothesis is that they may be communicating with somebody already. But I do believe that's what the Great Pyramid was used for, power generation. And when I say other things, you can calculate based on the base size of the pyramid and the height and the size of most of the stones average, you can actually calculate a lot of things. You can calculate the distance of the Earth to the moon, the distance of the Earth to the sun. You can calculate the speed of the Earth on its own axis.
Hold on. How can you calculate all this?
Well, I have all these calculations broken down, which have been analyzed by college professors, and they're blown away. I'll send you a sheet you can show on the screen for this, the breakdown of the mathematics, how to times and square all these numbers to come up with these calculations. You can calculate the tropical year, the sidereal year. You can calculate the speed of the Earth around the sun, the speed of the sun around the Milky Way. You can even calculate the speed of the Milky Way around the local cluster of galaxies that are out there. All this can be calculated by the construction. This is the brick masonry. This is the Freemasonry encoded into the Great Pyramid. This is the Mason information. It's all about astrophysics.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.